For 6 months, the world watched the brutal divorce of Marcus Thorne, and they heard from everyone. They heard from his lawyers, his PR team, and his new 22-year-old girlfriend. They heard from sources in Page Six and friends in the Daily Mail. But from the woman at the center of it, Eliza Thorne, they heard nothing. She was the ghost at the feast, a silent, tragic figure who the world assumed had been broken and discarded. They thought her story was over. But Eliza was just waiting for the right moment to make a sound. And when she did, it wasn't a whisper. It was an explosion that rocked the foundation of New York society, beginning on the first Monday in May, when she arrived at the Met Gala on the arm of a man no one had seen in a decade. The end of the Thorne marriage wasn't a crack. It was a slow Arctic freeze. For 12 years, Eliza Thorne had been the perfect counterpart to Marcus the Wolf Thorne. While he was the thunder of Thorne Capital, a man who moved markets with a single snarled word, she was the cultivated, quiet grace that got them into the rooms thunder could never open. She was old money Philadelphia. He was new money Queens. She curated their art, their friendships, and their son Leo. She hosted the dinners that cemented his deals. She was the one who could tell a real Rothko from a very good fake, and the one who knew which politicians were too toxic to be seen with before the scandal broke. She was, in short, the architect of his social empire, and he in turn had grown to resent her for it. The divorce papers arrived not by a process server, but by his executive assistant, a woman half Eliza's age with twice her ambition, who slid the folder onto the 18th-century French desk in their Park Avenue library. "Marcus asked me to ensure you receive this before he boards for Gstaad," the assistant said, her eyes not meeting Eliza's. Eliza just nodded her hand, tracing the inlay of the desk. "Thank you, Sarah. Will that be all?" The war that followed was a public bloodbath fought entirely by one side. Marcus's PR machine, led by the infamous fixer Harris Stone, went into overdrive. The narrative was set within 48 hours. Marcus, a vibrant, self-made man, had been suffocated by his cold, traditional wife. He had outgrown the marriage. Page Six ran a photo of him laughing on a yacht in St. Bart's, his arm draped around a 22-year-old influencer named Isabella Rivas. The caption, clearly fed by his team, read, "Thorne Unbound the Wolf finds his vibe." Meanwhile, Eliza was silent. She didn't release a statement. She didn't hire her own PR fixer. She hired a single brutal divorce attorney from a quiet white shoe firm, a man known for discretion, not for press. When the paparazzi caught her leaving her lawyer's office, she wasn't crying. She wasn't defiant. She just looked tired. She wore a simple beige trench coat and no makeup. The Daily Mail headline screamed, "The discarded wife, a broken Eliza Thorne, faces her new reality." Her friends, the wives of the other titans, didn't know what to do. They called their voices hushed. "Eliza, darling, you must fight this. He can't treat you this way. Harris Stone is telling everyone you're unwell." "I'm fine, Cynthia," Eliza would say, her voice calm as glass. "Just focusing on Leo." Ah, Leo. Her 17-year-old son, currently buffered at a boarding school in Switzerland, was her only non-negotiable. This was the true reason for her silence. Marcus had made a threat not in writing, but in a cold late-night phone call. "You fight me, you make this messy, and I will drag Leo through a custody battle that will gut him. I will prove you are an unfit mother, an alcoholic, a depressive. Harris can paint a picture so dark your own mother wouldn't recognize you. Or you can be quiet, take the settlement, and he will be fine. Your choice." So she chose. She remained silent. She let the world believe she was broken. She let them believe she was a relic, a casualty of a modern man's ambition. She moved out of the 20-room penthouse and into a small, elegant but modest pre-war apartment on the Upper West Side, a neighborhood Marcus openly disdained. The narrative was complete. Marcus Thorne had won. He had his youth, his freedom, and the public's fascination. Eliza Thorne had her silence, her small apartment, and her son's well-being. The case was closed, or so everyone thought. Marcus Thorne loved to win. He loved the feeling of it, the crisp finality. He celebrated his freedom, by co-chairing the upcoming Met Gala, the absolute pinnacle of New York's social pyramid. Vogue had announced his co-chairmanship alongside Isabella Rivas, a move that stunned the old guard but delighted the new. It was a coronation. The divorce settlement was finalized in a sealed private agreement, but Harris Stone, in a masterstroke of spin, leaked the details to a friendly columnist. The narrative Eliza Thorne walks away with a paltry $20 million and the apartment. The world gasped. $20 million. From a man whose net worth was estimated at north of $5 billion, he was a monster. But then the second part of the spin. Friends of Marcus, i.e. Harris Stone, clarified, Eliza refused to negotiate. She just wanted it over. She's tired. Marcus begged her to take more, but she just gave up. He's heartbroken by her state of mind. It was brilliant. It painted him as generous and her as unstable. Why wouldn't she fight? What woman in her right mind would walk away from $1 billion claim? His own lawyers were baffled. She folded Marcus. Her attorney didn't even counter the main offer. They just accepted. See? Marcus said, sipping a $5,000 bottle of scotch in his glass-walled office overlooking Central Park. She's broken. I told you. She has no fight. She had one strange request. His lawyer Bill continued shuffling papers. She didn't want the Hamptons house. She didn't want the art collection. She asked for one single piece. Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. The Picasso the Basquiat. No, that's the thing. It's a contemporary piece. A study in blue by some unknown artist, barely worth $50,000. It was hanging in the guest wing. She specifically requested it, and in exchange she waived her claim on the rest of the collection, which, as you know, is valued at over $200 million. Marcus leaned back and roared with laughter. A $50,000 painting. She traded a fortune for a piece of junk. My God, she's really lost it. He initialed the paper. Give it to her. Give her the damn painting. It's the least I can do for the poor woman. The study in blue was delivered to her apartment by a generic art handler. It was a large, moody abstract, mostly deep indigos and blacks. Eliza supervised its hanging in her small new living room, where it took up almost an entire wall. Her lawyer called, exasperated. Eliza, I have to ask, why? We could have had him. We could have taken him for 10 times the settlement. Why the painting? Eliza sat on a packing box looking at the piece. It was a gift, Bill, from a long time ago. It just reminds me of a different time. $100 million different time. Eliza, you're being sentimental. Yes, she said, her voice soft. That's it. Sentimental. She hung up. She walked to the painting, her fingers tracing the thick impasto of the canvas. She was alone. The apartment was quiet. She was by all accounts a defeated woman. She was also by all accounts the sole owner of the study in blue. And that, it seemed, was exactly what she wanted. The man who never came to New York was Alexander Xander Costas. If Marcus Thorne was the wolf, Xander Costas was a ghost. A true unicorn billionaire, he had at 25 developed the base algorithm for a predictive logistics AI that now quietly ran 60% of the world's shipping. He'd taken his company, Helios public, cashed out, and vanished. He wasn't a recluse in the Howard Hughes long fingernails and jars sense. He was just uninterested. He lived on a 50,000-acre ranch in Wyoming that was less a home and more a high-tech monastery. He didn't do interviews. He didn't have social media. He wasn't on any rich list because no one could actually pin down his assets, which were rumored to be held in a complex web of trusts and foundations. His one public passion, if you could call it that, was funding impossible green energy projects. He poured hundreds of millions into experimental tech, most of which failed. One, however, had not. Gen-Mus, a tidal power company based in Maine, had been on the verge of a breakthrough. It was founded by Xander's old college professor, a man who was a father to him. And then Origin had been destroyed. A sudden brutal short sell, led by a vicious anonymous report full of half-truths, had driven the company's stock to zero in a single day. The company folded, the patents were scattered, and the professor, his reputation and life's work in ruins, had a fatal heart attack 2 weeks later. Xander, with his limitless resources, had investigated. It wasn't hard to find the source of the short. The data was clear. The anonymous report had been generated by an independent research firm, which was in turn a shell company owned by a holding company which was owned by Thorn Capital. Marcus Thorn had made a quick $300 million by destroying a good company and killing a good man. Xander Costas did not believe in revenge. He believed in consequences. He'd been watching Marcus Thorn for a year. He saw the arrogance, the hubris, the obsessive need for public approval. He saw the vulgarity of his new life, the parading of the 22-year-old. And he saw the wife. He saw the silence. He saw the beige trench coat. He saw the Daily Mail articles. And unlike the rest of the world, he didn't see a broken woman. He saw a compressed spring. He saw a long game player. He did a deep dive on Eliza Thorne. He found her. He saw her art history degree from Brown. He saw the obscure, brilliant monograph she'd written on 17th century Dutch art and the hidden language of still life. He saw a woman who understood subtext. And then his research team flagged the divorce settlement, specifically the waiver of the $200 million art collection in exchange for one $50,000 painting. Xander paused. He had his team pull the specs on every piece of art in the Thorn collection. When he saw the study in blue, he almost smiled. He knew the artist. A young, brilliant tech art anarchist he'd once sponsored. An artist who didn't just paint, but who embedded. Xander finally understood. Eliza wasn't just playing a long game. She was playing his game. He made a call, not to Eliza, but to his tailor on Savile Row. "Jonathan," he said, his voice echoing slightly in his minimalist Wyoming study. "I need a tuxedo, black, traditional, and I need a ticket to a gala." Then he sent a single encrypted message to a burner phone he'd had delivered to Eliza's new apartment. It contained only 7 words. "The study in blue isn't by a painter, it's by a programmer." Eliza was looking at the painting when the message came. The phone, a simple black brick, buzzed on her coffee table. She had received it in a plain box 2 days prior with no return address. She had assumed it was a privacy-conscious gift from her lawyer. She read the 7 words. A cold shock ran up her spine. "The study in blue isn't by a painter. It's by a programmer." She looked at the painting. Study in blue. A gift from Marcus 12 years ago when he'd just closed his first truly massive deal. "It's by some hot new artist," he'd said, "a real original." He'd been so proud. He'd installed it in his home office where it had stayed for years, a backdrop to all his video calls. Until, that is, he'd redecorated. 3 years ago, he'd gone full billionaire beige, all sterile minimalism. The dark, moody painting was banished to the guest wing. "It's depressing," he'd declared. "Get rid of it." But Eliza had always loved it. She'd moved it herself, a programmer. She walked to the canvas. She touched the frame. It was unusually thick black-painted wood. She ran her fingers along the edge, feeling for a switch, a seam. Nothing. She went to her kitchen, found a small screwdriver. Carefully she undid the screws holding the canvas to the back of the frame. The canvas came loose. She set it aside. The frame itself was now just a hollow black rectangle. She examined it. In the bottom right corner, what had looked like a wood knot was something else. It was a tiny recessed USB-C port filled with black wax. Her heart was hammering. She spent 10 minutes carefully picking out the wax with a needle. She found a cable from her laptop. She plugged it in. Nothing. Of course. It wouldn't just mount as a drive. She looked at the phone. A new message. He always loved that he was a self-made man. But he never checked his own work. Eliza's mind raced. Marcus. Self-made. His home office. The painting was the backdrop, always, for every call. Until 3 years ago. What happened 3 years ago? The SEC investigation. The one that had gone nowhere. The one everyone said he'd beaten. He hadn't beaten it. He'd hidden it. She thought about his arrogance, his obsessive-compulsive nature which he disguised as discipline, his passwords. He always used the same pattern. The name of his first boat, the year of his first million, and a special character. She went to her laptop. The frame when plugged in wasn't a drive, it was a network, a tiny air-gapped encrypted node. It was asking for a password. She typed Siren Sloop, 98. The network unlocked. A single folder appeared on her desktop. Thorn Ledger. She opened it. It wasn't a crypto wallet, not exactly. It was so much worse. It was Marcus's entire other life, a complete unadulterated parallel bookkeeping system for Thorn Capital. Every illegal trade, every shell company, every bribed analyst and paid-off politician, every market manipulation. The Origen short sale was there detailed in full, with a smug note, KO'd the old man. It was a detailed confession of a decade of high-level federal white-collar crime. He'd kept it air-gapped, hidden in plain sight, a monument to his own arrogance disguised as art. He'd gotten so comfortable, so assured of his own victory over her, he'd forgotten he'd given his entire criminal enterprise to the one person he'd just screwed over. He hadn't just underestimated her. He'd forgotten she existed. The black phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. She answered. A man's voice, quiet and with a faint, unplaceable accent. Ms. Thorne. Eliza. My name is Alexander Costas. I believe you have something of mine. I don't know what you mean, she stammered, staring at the screen. Not yours, not his, mine. The Origen file. Marcus Thorne destroyed my mentor. He took my company. I believe the evidence of that is now on your laptop. Eliza sat down. She was shaking, but not from fear. From rage. A cold, pure, brilliant rage. Yes, it is. Good, said the voice. Now I imagine you've been having a rather quiet 6 months. How would you feel about a trip to New York? I hear the Met Gala is lovely in May. They did not meet in New York. That was too compromised, too full of eyes. 2 days later, Eliza, traveling under her maiden name, landed in Geneva. A black Audi A8 was waiting on the tarmac. She was driven not to a hotel, but to a severe, beautiful villa on the edge of the lake, all glass and old stone. Alexander Xander Costas was not what she expected. He wasn't a tech bro in a hoodie, nor was he a slick-tailored master of the universe. He was quiet. Tall, with an athlete's build gone slightly to seed, he had intense dark eyes and the weary posture of a man who'd been thinking too hard for too long. He wore a simple, expensive cashmere sweater and jeans. He was making tea. "Welcome," he said, not offering to shake her hand. "Chamomile or something stronger." "The chamomile is fine," she said, her voice steady. They sat in a vast minimalist room. There was no art on the walls. "You have the ledger," he said. It wasn't a question. "I have a copy," she replied. "The original is safe." A flicker of a smile. "The first one." "Good. You are exactly who I'd hoped you'd be. You understand subtext." "You're the one who knew the artist," Eliza said. "You sponsored him." "Dorian, yes. He believed art should be dangerous. I believe finance should be honest. Marcus Thorne believes in neither. He believes only in himself." "What do you want, Mr. Costas Xander? Please," he said. "What do I want? I want consequences. The SEC won't move on this. Not against Marcus. The ledger is too complex. He'd bury them in litigation. By the time they unraveled it, he'd have moved all his assets to non-extradition countries. He'd be on a yacht laughing." "So what do you propose?" Eliza asked. "Marcus isn't afraid of the law. He's afraid of people. He's afraid of being seen as a loser. His entire empire is built on the perception of his genius. If that perception shatters his investors' panic, his board gets cold feet. The wolf becomes a pariah. And then, when he's weak, when his allies are gone, then the SEC can have him. You want to embarrass him? I want to unveil him, Xander said. At the one place in the world he feels most powerful, at his coronation, the Met Gala. He laid out the plan. It was simple, and it was brutal. Xander had already been in contact with a small elite team of investigative journalists at ProPublica. They were the unbuyable. They were vetting the ledger. They were building the story. They're missing the prologue, Xander said. The human element, the why. They have the what, but they need the who. They need your story, Eliza. Not as a victim, but as the person who brought him down. Eliza was quiet for a long time, watching the water. He threatened my son. He threatened to destroy Leo to keep me silent. Xander's eyes darkened. The Origin founder, my professor, he had a son. Marcus's team leaked a story that his son was a drug addict. It was a lie, but it broke the man's heart. That is his playbook. This isn't just for you, Xander, Eliza said, meeting his gaze. Or your professor. It's for me. It's for my son. It's for the 6 months I spent as a ghost. But I have one condition. Name it. The ledger, the money, the billions he's hidden. I don't want it. The foundation for your professor's family, the victims of Origin. They get it. All of it. Xander looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. She wasn't asking for a cut. She wasn't a gold digger. She was a woman who had been traded, used, and discarded, and she was done with the entire game. That's not a condition, Xander said. That was always the plan. But Eliza, this will make you the most famous woman in the world. For a week at least. Are you ready for that? Eliza thought of the beige trench coat. She thought of the Daily Mail headline. Broken. I need something to wear, she said. The first Monday in May. The Metropolitan Museum of Art. The theme chosen a year prior with delicious unknowing irony was The Gilded Cage. And the king of the cage had arrived. Marcus Thorne was not just an attendee. He was the co-chair. He had paid a rumored 8-figure sum for the privilege, a price that bought him not just a title, but the right to own the night. He was the first to arrive, a strategic move to ensure maximum press coverage. He stepped out of a matte black custom Rolls-Royce Cullinan onto the red, no this year cream and gold carpet, and the night exploded. Marcus to the left. Marcus. The wall of sound from the paparazzi was a physical force, a roar of adulation that was to Marcus the only music that mattered. He was preening. He wore a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, but he'd had it modified. The silk lapels weren't just black. They were woven with thread of gold and punctuated by a gaudy 3-carat yellow diamond pin. It was a statement of such new aggressive wealth it bordered on parody. He turned and offered a hand to his date. Isabella Rivas unfolded herself from the car. She was by any definition stunning, and she was by any definition naked. Her dress, a custom piece by a designer known more for Instagram than couture, was less a gilded cage and more a golden web. It was a matrix of 24-karat gold chains and strategically placed crystals, a see-through map of her perfect 22-year-old body. The paps went from roaring to shrieking. This was the photo. This was the clickbait. Marcus, Isabella, over here, who are you wearing? Isabella, a veteran of this specific kind of warfare, did not speak. She just posed, her lips parted. Her body arched. She was a living, breathing symbol of his victory. This is what I traded up for. They began their ascent up the famous stairs. Lala Anthony, hosting for Vogue, rushed to them, microphone extended. Marcus, Isabella, you look breathtaking. Marcus, as co-chair, you really set the tone. What does tonight's theme mean to you? Marcus gave his trademark shark smile, the one that had terrified Wall Street for 2 decades. It means, he said, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone, that we're in a new era. The old dusty cages are being broken. People are afraid of change, afraid of new energy. But you can't cage the future. He put a possessive arm around Isabella's waist. It's about being unbound. It's about freedom. And Isabella, look, Lala gushed. I just wanted to feel free, you know. Isabella said, her voice a vocal fried whisper. Marcus and I we're so happy. We're not hiding. We're not in a cage at all. A new era indeed, Marcus said with a final pointed look into the camera. A look that said, she's gone. I've won. The past is dead. They lapped up the attention, taking a full 30 minutes to ascend the stairs. Inside they held court. Marcus, the co-chair, alongside Isabella, the ingenue. They were the absolute, undeniable gravitational center of the event. It was in every sense of the word his coronation. Back on the carpet, the energy was winding down. The A-listers had arrived. The anchors were beginning to sign off. What a night. A few more stragglers, but it looks like that's it for the major arrivals. A truly stunning showing from co-chair Marcus Thorne and Isabella Rivas. And then a car pulled up. It pulled up so quietly, so deferentially, that the press in their exhausted post-A-list slump almost missed it. It wasn't a sponsor's car. It wasn't a new flashy Maybach or a fire-engine red Ferrari. It was a 1990s black unadorned Bentley, boxy, severe, and stubbornly out of place. It had no courtesy of plaque. It was, for this event, a ghost. The younger paps, the ones from TikTok, were confused. Who's this, a publicist? Is it a politician? Ugh. A Vogue handler, clipboard in hand, looked confused. I don't have this car on the list. The door opened. A simple black polished leather dress shoe hit the pavement. No flash. No flare. The man who stepped out was nondescript. Tall, with a powerful build, he wore a perfectly cut, almost boringly traditional black tuxedo. No diamonds. No velvet. His hair was dark and slightly unruly. The younger press was blank. Who is that, a producer? But on the press bridge, the veteran photographers, the ones who had been shooting this event for 20 years, went cold. And in the financial press pen, the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg reporters who were forced to cover this social event, a man literally dropped his recorder. A woman from the Financial Times was the first to speak, her voice a choked whisper. Oh my God. Get the shot. Get the shot now. That's Costas. The name rippled through the press corps like an electric shock. Costas. Who? A 20-year-old pap asked. Alexander Costas, you idiot, his boss hissed, shoving him aside. The unicorn, the ghost of Wyoming. He's not been photographed in a decade, get the shot. The energy on the carpet didn't just reignite, it detonated. This wasn't a celebrity. This was a myth. Xander Costas didn't do parties. He didn't do New York. His presence wasn't a social call. It was a market indicator. It meant something tectonic, something fundamental was shifting in the world. Mr. Costas, why are you here? Xander, a word. What does this mean for the markets? Alexander, are you investing? Are you back? Xander Costas, looking pale and deeply uncomfortable like a deep-sea creature brought to the surface, did not look at the cameras. He did not look at the screaming press. He simply turned and offered his hand back into the darkness of the car. And that is when the night truly broke. A woman's hand took his. It was elegant, unadorned, save for a simple band on her right finger. A shoe emerged. Not a sparkly, strappy 22-year-old sandal. It was a severe, powerful midnight blue stiletto. A stiletto that meant business. A woman's form followed. The silence that fell upon the red carpet was not a lull. It was a physical, crushing void. The screaming, the shouting, the questions, all of it stopped as if a switch had been thrown. You could hear a single camera shutter from the bridge click. 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 It was Eliza Thorne. But it was not Eliza Thorne. The woman who had haunted the Daily Mail in a beige trench coat, her face pale and broken, was gone. In her place was a creature from a different, more dangerous mythology. Her hair, once a soft society wife brown, was slicked back in a wet, severe style, as if she had just emerged from a dark ocean. Her makeup was non-existent, save for a brutal blood-red lip. And the dress. It was a custom Schiaparelli gown, a masterpiece of architectural midnight blue silk, the color of the study in blue. It was designed like armor severe and sculpted with a high, powerful neck. It was not a dress made to be pretty. It was a dress made to be worn to a strategic unveiling. But the thing that made the world collectively gasp, was the bodice. There was no gilded anything. There was no gold filigree. Instead, sculpted from a single piece of matte, burnished almost bronze gold, was a massive, intricate antique key. Its wards and bit were a complex, baffling design. It was not a delicate charm. It was a tool. It was the key to a dungeon, the key to a vault, the key to the gilded cage. The pun was so obvious, so brutal, that it was a work of genius. Eliza Thorne stood there for one long 3-second beat. She looked at the press, not with a smile, not with a pose, but with the cold, calm finality of a judge about to read a verdict. The silence broke. The press didn't just scream, they roared. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated hysteria. They had been given a story. Not just a dress, but a narrative. Eliza. Eliza. My God, Eliza. Who are you wearing, Eliza? Ms. Thorne, are you with him? Xander and Eliza, look here. They didn't stop. They didn't pose. Xander, a silent sentinel, put a hand on the small of her back, a gesture of quiet, powerful protection. They moved as a unit, an island of terrifying calm in a sea of hysteria. They were an unbreachable fortress. They walked up the stairs, the press parting for them like the Red Sea, and they did not say a single word. Inside in the Temple of Dender, Marcus was telling a hilarious, self-deprecating, but actually self-aggrandizing story to a U.S. senator and a tech CEO. Isabella was on her phone pouting. And I told him, if you want to short the stock, you've got to at least have the... He stopped. The energy in the room had changed. The buzz which had been directed at him was now a palpable wave rolling in from the entrance. People were turning. People were gasping. What is it? The senator asked, turning. Marcus turned too. Annoyance flickered across his face. Who dared pull focus from him? He saw her first. He didn't recognize her. Not for a full 2 seconds. He saw the dress, the power, the severe beauty, and his first thought was, who is that? A new actress. A European royal. And then his brain caught up. The blood drained from his face. Eliza. He was frozen. It was a visual shock, but it wasn't the threat. The threat was the man beside her. He looked at her escort. His mind, a high-speed processor built for risk and threat assessment, stalled. It wasn't a face he'd seen at Davos. It wasn't a rival from another bank. It was a ghost. Costas. His glass of champagne halfway to his lips froze. Costas. Here. With Eliza. His mind in a sudden high-speed photographic panic began to connect the dots. Costas. Origen. The short cell. The old professor. Costas never goes anywhere. He never leaves Wyoming. Why is he here? He's here for me. He's here for me, and he's with the divorce, the settlement, the lawyers. She folded. She just gave up. She didn't fight. She took $20 million. She was broken. She wasn't broken. The waiver, the $200 million art collection. She gave it all up. For... His blood turned to ice. A single distinct memory pushed down and forgotten. The painting, the study in blue, the stupid, depressing painting. In the guest wing. No. Before that. In my office. For years. It was the backdrop to every call. To, oh God. His hand was shaking. He put the glass down. The gilded cage. The key. He looked at the woman in the blue dress. She was being greeted not by a publicist, but by Anna Wintour herself, who bypassed a dozen other guests to embrace them both, kissing them on each cheek. A sign of ultimate approval. Isabella was tugging on his arm, her voice a distant, annoying whine. "Babe, babe, you look like you saw a ghost." "What's wrong?" "Why is everyone looking at that lady? Her dress is weird." From across the room, as if she could feel his stare, Eliza Thorne turned her head. She found his eyes through the crowd of celebrities and titans. She didn't smile. She didn't glare. She didn't scowl. She just held his gaze. It was a simple, neutral, devastatingly calm acknowledgement. It was not the look of a spurned wife or an angry ex. It was the look of a biologist staring at a specimen on a slide. It was the look of a CEO making a necessary, dispassionate cut. It was the look of an executioner who had already sharpened the axe and was merely waiting for the clock to strike. And in that one crystal-clear, horrifying second, Marcus Thorne, the wolf, the victor, the king of the cage, understood that he had not won. He had been allowed to think he'd won. He hadn't discarded his wife. He had handed his executioner the warrant, the pen, and the sword, all for the price of a single $50,000 painting. He was a dead man. The Gala was a study in physics. For the first hour, Marcus Thorne, resplendent in his garish, diamond-encrusted Tom Ford, had been the center of gravity. He was the sun, and everyone else, Isabella included, was a planet in his orbit. Now the laws of this universe had been rewritten. A new binary star system had entered the room, and its gravitational pull was absolute. The quiet, dark-clad man and the woman in the midnight blue dress were the new center. The entire room, all the power, all the fame, all the money was being drawn into their orbit. It started as a whisper. "Is that Costas? By God, it is." The murmur came from a banking patriarch at a table near the entrance. "He never leaves Wyoming, ever. What is he doing here?" "Forget him, darling, look who he's with." "Is that Eliza Thorne? I thought she was. You know." The woman, a socialite who had cut Eliza from her dinner party list 3 months prior, let her voice trail off, her face pale. "She doesn't look broken to me," her husband muttered, adjusting his tie. "She looks lethal." Eliza and Xander didn't do anything. They didn't work the room. They had been personally guided to Anna Wintour's private table, where they were seated alongside the French finance minister and a revered Oscar-winning actress. They spoke quietly amongst themselves. They ate their food. They did not look for anyone. They did not need to. And with every passing calm minute, Marcus's panic grew. The temperature around his own table had dropped 20 degrees. The laughter was gone. The fawning courtiers had suddenly found the architecture of the temple fascinating, their gaze fixed anywhere but on him. Isabella, oblivious, was pouting. "Babe, you're not even listening to me. I was saying, should I post the selfie with the caviar now or wait?" "Shut up!" Marcus snapped, his voice a low hiss. "What?" She whined, her eyes welling with tears. "I said," he seethed, "be quiet." He had to know. His mind was racing a high-speed collision of worst-case scenarios. Costas, Origen, the short cell, the old professor, the painting, the guest wing, the divorce settlement, the waiver. Oh God, the waiver. She didn't trade $200 million for a $50,000 painting. She traded it. His blood ran cold. He was a man of action. He couldn't wait for the bomb to go off. He had to find it, dismantle it. He stood smoothing his jacket, a parody of his usual confident self. He felt a bead of sweat trace a cold path down his spine. He began the walk. The 100 feet from his table to Anna Wintour's felt like the Gobi Desert. He passed the table of a rival hedge fund manager who watched him with a new predatory interest. He passed the socialite who'd cut Eliza. She flinched and looked away as if he were already a ghost. He was 10 feet from the table. Eliza was in profile, listening to the finance minister. She had not acknowledged his existence. "Sir, can I help you?" A man had materialized in his path. Not a Vogue security guard in a red blazer, but a man who looked like he belonged on a presidential detail custom-tailored black suit, transparent earpiece, and the kind of dead calm eyes that had seen everything. Marcus attempted to pull rank, his voice coming out tighter than he'd intended. "I'm Marcus Thorne. I'm the co-chair of this event. I'm just going to say hello to my—" He couldn't say the word wife. "I'm aware of who you are, Mr. Thorne." The guard said, his voice polite, which was somehow more terrifying. "Ms. Wintour's table is private at the moment." "Private? I'm the co-chair," Marcus repeated, his voice rising. "Yes, sir, and it's private." The "at the moment" was gone, replaced by the finality of a closed door. The guard hadn't moved, but he'd somehow taken up more space. He was an unbreachable, polite wall. Humiliation, hot and sharp, washed over Marcus. He had been blocked publicly at his own coronation. He turned a jerky, puppet-like movement and began the walk of shame back to his table, the stairs of the room burning into his back like spotlights. He sat down, his face ashen. "What happened?" Isabella asked. "Did you say hi?" Marcus just stared, unseeing. He was trapped. The gilded cage was no longer a theme. It was his reality. And then at 10 p.m., precisely as the main course was being cleared and the orchestra had just finished a soaring piece by Vivaldi, the trap snapped shut. Into the ensuing silence came a new sound. Bzz, 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 tea. It was not a single phone. It was a symphony of them. The sound of 500 of the world's most powerful people, all receiving the same push alert at the same second. A U.S. senator at a nearby table looked at his phone, and his face went white. The rival hedge fund manager who'd been watching Marcus now grinned a slow, wolfish smile and typed a series of frantic messages into his own device. The Oscar-winning actress at Eliza's table gasped, covering her mouth. The room was silent as a tomb, save for the frantic click-click-click of hundreds of eyes scanning screens. Isabella, annoyed, picked up her own phone. "Ugh, who's ProPublica? Why are they sending me news, babe? Why is your picture—" Marcus grabbed her phone. The headline was stark. There was no page 6 slang. It was brutal journalistic black and white. The Thorne Ledger, How Wall Street's Wolf Faked a Decade of Wins and Destroyed American Companies. The article was a masterpiece of journalistic evisceration. It was over 8,000 words long, and it was all there. It detailed the ledger, the one hidden in the study in blue. It detailed the shell companies, the illegal trades, the bribes to analysts, the market manipulation. It had an entire heartbreaking section on the Origin short sale, complete with on-the-record quotes from the professor's family and the 200 employees who had lost their jobs. And then there was the prologue, the human element. The article began not with numbers, but with a stunning, defiant new portrait of Eliza Thorne taken in her new small apartment, the study in blue, hanging behind her like a captured enemy flag. "I was silent for 6 months," her pull quote began. "I was told my silence would protect my family. But silence is what allows men like Marcus Thorne to flourish. He didn't just hide his money from his wife. He hid his crimes. He hid them in a painting he'd banished to a guest room, a painting he called depressing. He forgot that I am an art historian. He forgot that I know how to look for the things hidden in plain sight. He called me a relic. He threatened my son to ensure my silence. He forgot that my silence was not a weakness. It was a strategy. He forgot I was the one who curated his life. He just forgot me." Marcus stood up. The chair didn't just scrape. It toppled crashing to the marble floor with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. "Babe," Isabella whispered, her face finally registering fear. He didn't run. Not at first. He walked a fast, jerky stride, shoving past a waiter who dropped a tray of champagne flutes. The sound of shattering glass barely registered. The room parted for him. It was the Red Sea, but with contempt. These people, his friends, his allies, were not angry. They were terrified. He was no longer the wolf. He was a leper. He was contagion. He reached the grand lobby. He could see the exit, the promise of the cool night air. "Mr. Thorne." A man stepped in front of him. Nicholas Grant, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal who had been tipped off and was waiting like a patient spider. Nicholas Grant, Wall Street Journal. Any comment on the ProPublica report? Any comment on the Origin short sell? Any comment on the SEC investigation you supposedly beat 3 years ago? Get out of my way! Marcus roared a primal animal sound. He shoved him hard, sending the smaller man stumbling back into a large floral arrangement. A camera flashed, capturing the moment. The flash was blinding, and that was the photo that went out on the wire. Not the suave co-chair in his Tom Ford, but the red-faced, violent, desperate man his mask of civilization ripped away. The real Marcus. He burst through the doors and into a wall of paparazzi who, seeing the ProPublica alert, had descended into a frenzy. He was gone. An hour later, the party was in conversational ruins. Eliza and Xander stood. Anna Wintour stood with them, embracing them both. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice clear. They walked the same path Marcus had run. But where he had met contempt, they were met with a stunned, reverent awe. People stood to let them pass. They were a new, quiet, terrifying form of royalty. They reached the front steps, which were now a war zone of flashing lights. The press was a shrieking mob. "Eliza! Eliza! Why did you do it?" "Xander, are you two a couple? Is this a revenge plot?" "Eliza, what's next for you?" "Ms. Thorne, what are you wearing?" Eliza just walked her head high. Xander's hand, a steady presence on her back. They were almost to the car. A reporter from the Associated Press, a veteran who knew how to get the shot, shoved a microphone past a guard. "Ms. Thorne, please, just one question. What are you wearing?" Eliza paused. The world stopped. This was the soundbite. She turned not to the reporter but to the main camera, the one broadcasting to the world. A small, devastating, and utterly final smile touched her red lips. "It's Schiaparelli," she said, her voice clear as a bell, "and I'm wearing my freedom." A stunned silence. Then chaos. Xander had the door to the old Bentley open. As she ducked in, a reporter from the Times shouted, "Xander, what about the Gilded Cage theme?" Xander paused, one foot in the car. He looked at the reporter, then at the burnished gold key on the dress of the woman now inside. "A cage is only a cage if you don't hold the key," he said. "And a key? A key is only as powerful as the cage it unlocks." He got in. The door shut with a solid, definitive thunk. The black car pulled away, a void in the sea of flashing lights, leaving the wreckage behind. The fallout was immediate and total. The ProPublica article triggered a pre-market sell-off that halted trading of Thorne Capital. The board, seeing the ledger, didn't consult lawyers. They cooperated with the SEC. Marcus Thorne was not at his penthouse nor his Hamptons estate. He was arrested 2 days later, not by a polite summons, but by a team of FBI agents on the tarmac at Teterboro Airport. He was attempting to board his Gulfstream, which had a flight plan filed for the Cayman Islands, a non-extradition country. The New York Post cover was split on the left, the photo of him shoving the WSJ reporter. On the right, the new photo of him in handcuffs, his face gray and slack, the wolf well and truly caged. Harris Stone, the PR fixer, had his office raided, and his other high-profile clients, terrified of association, cut him loose in a single afternoon. Isabella Rivas, after a tearful 24-hour TikTok drama about negative energy and needing to protect her brand, was on a sponsored trip to Dubai by Friday. 2 weeks later, Eliza was in Geneva. She and Xander were at the villa, not as lovers, but as partners in the truest sense of the word. They were overlooking the lake, signing the final charter for the Origin Justice Fund. It was capitalized with the $3.2 billion in assets seized from Marcus's illegal offshore accounts. The ledger had pinpointed to the digital cent. The fund would not only make the victims whole, it would pour hundreds of millions into the very tidal power technology Marcus had tried to kill. Her son Leo was there. He had flown in from school, his face a mixture of awe and a new adult understanding. He had read the article. He'd looked at his mother not as a victim, but as a warrior. "He threatened me, Leo," Eliza told him quietly over tea. "He threatened to destroy you, to keep me silent." Leo met her gaze. "I know, Mom. I read that part. And you didn't stay quiet. You just waited until you could roar." He hugged her, and for the first time she felt his strength, that she realized was her real victory. The black phone sat on the table between Xander and Eliza. "What's next for you, Eliza?" Xander asked. "You're the most famous woman in the world for now." "Not for long, thank God," she said, watching the snow on the mountains. "The world will move on, but I won't. I'm thinking of starting a program, a foundation." She looked at him, the man the world called a ghost. For all the other silent women, the ones in the beige trench coats, the ones told to be quiet to protect their children or their reputations, the ones the world calls broken. "What will you call it?" he asked. Eliza smiled that same devastating smile from the Gala steps. "The Key Foundation. I'm not just going to give them a voice. I'm going to give them a crowbar." Xander Costas looked at Eliza Thorne, the art historian who had brought an empire down with a single unloved painting. It was a real, genuine smile this time. "I know a few good programmers," he said. Eliza sipped her tea. "And I," she replied, "know all the best art handlers." In the end, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the revenge. It was about a single, simple choice to be silent or to speak. Eliza Thorne's story is a masterclass in playing the long game. She showed the world that broken is just a word people use when they've underestimated your strength. She proved that the most powerful weapon isn't a billion-dollar bank account, but the truth. And she reminded us all that true power isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the one who holds the key. What did you think of Eliza's incredible comeback? Was her plan genius, or was it too risky? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love this story of justice and a comeback for the ages, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and don't forget to subscribe for more true life dramas. You won't want to miss what we unveil next.